Ralph, why I wanted to have you on is I've seen your work on Insight Timer for a few years. I have one sleep course on the app, and I actually remember taking your sleep course. I was taking a bunch of people's sleep courses at the time because sleep is kind of a new thing for me. I had struggled with insomnia and wanted to create a course on it. So it's not my niche, and so I was curious how other people were doing some of their sleep courses. And what I loved about you and your work in general is how much it resonates with bringing your unique experiences, your journey in a wider sense, and then kind of making an offering and making a gift to the world through meditation. And as people have heard me wax poetic on this podcast a lot around meditation being a medium that we get to share our gifts in and bringing our art in that way. And so I want to just thank you for being an example of that, which is why I know that it's going to be fun to hear your wisdom on how you do it, because we all maybe do it a little differently.
Well, thank you very much for listening, Lou. Thanks for those kind words, man.
Yeah. So I'd love to just hear, you've been on all of these adventures that have inspired what your learnings and what your sharings. And, when did that adventure seeking start? And maybe more so, like, when did the spiritual journey start? I don't know if we start out on our pilgrimage to India or if something in our life has to happen, or maybe a challenge that kind of shifts things. So just be curious to hear a bit about if there was that for you, and when did that spiritual journey start?
Yeah, I can tell you that. It wasn't a spiritual journey. I was called into my boss' office in at the very beginning of COVID. At the very beginning, it had just started, but the shops were closed. I was working for a retail company, and I lost my job at the age of 55. And um, and there wasn't much, and there isn't much chance for anyone that age to be finding employment again. And so I think two things happened. Once I was suddenly left with a lot of time because I had a corporate career. I was director level reporting to the CEO. And from one moment to the next, I had a lot of time. And also I couldn't sleep anymore. Like I was really I think I was stressed out when I was working. But then when I lost my job, I was freaking out and I couldn't sleep anymore. So what I did was what really helped me, and that's exactly what I did, is I went out hiking. I live close to the Alps. I live in Munich, Bavaria. It's like 1 hour train ride to the Alps, and I did epic long outdoor hikes, multi-day hikes. I always had a sleeping bag, so I always have sleeping bag with me, never a tent. I always have a small recording device. And I started, I mean, I had nothing else to do. I started recording nature sounds during that time. There was no airplanes on the sky, no cars on the road. Nobody could drive to work. Nobody would be, you weren't allowed to leave your hometown actually during the lockdown. So I was making nature sound recordings and was telling those stories. And I just looked, one of the most listened to and most successful story I ever produced was the very first one that I published on Insight Timer, which is, oh, what is it called? It's called Thunderstorm in the Alps. And it was on one of those hikes where I was hiking, like it was a very long and tough, the Berliner Höhenweg. It is called in Austria. It's a 7 day hike, very challenging, around 2,500 meters, which I don't know how much that is in feet, but really high. Sort of you're always in the snow, and then you're going down and can sleep in those huts. Or what I did mostly, because I'm also don't have any money, so I slept just outside in my sleeping bag. And on the last lap, I got caught in the rain, and then a thunderstorm rolled in, and I found shelter in this little hut. And they built these huts, these shelter huts, and there was even wood in there, and I was safe. And that's sort of still the most, yes, listened to story. I think it's 50,000 downloads or listens it has. So it's really, really, and it's still a nice story. And that's how I started doing this. And that's why you probably know from the Facebook group, the only thing I really care about is recording quality. And there's any tips I would give is, yeah, make it good quality, uh, get good microphones, like Lure yourself. I can see you've got the Shure SM7B in front of you. I use the same one. If anybody tells me, yeah, you got to invest that money, it doesn't matter, because I come from a recording background. That's where my passion is. And that's where I started. But I wouldn't have considered myself, at least at that time, being interested um, in meditation or anything. That's not how it started. It started for me to be making hikes in Northern Africa in the Atlas Mountains. And then I went to the Himalayas, and that's sort of when things started changing.
Oh my goodness, there's so much to reflect on, and I want to start by saying that I'm actually getting married this July in the Italian Alps, the Dolomites. I have family in the
Oh, wow.
Trentino region of Italy, and so hearing you kind of in that same area, I know I get a sense of like what that landscape looks like, and so I have chills just thinking about you feeling this urge. And I think I want to reflect back and make sure I'm following your story right. So you really don't, you have, it sounds like a background in getting outdoors, or at least, nature and hiking. I'm assuming that was a background while you were in corporate. You lose your job, and all of a sudden you have this time, and you also had a passion for recording. And I'd be curious if you were recording things before that, and you bring your recording stuff out into nature. And I just want to confirm, it's not like you were saying, okay, I'm going to wait for a thunderstorm. I'm going to go to a hut. I'm going to record it. And then in a few years, it'll have 50,000 plays. I'm assuming that that's not in your head at that time.
Exactly. And honestly speaking, that's how I approached it. Yeah, yes, I'd started playing with record. I'm not very good with my eyesight. Actually, I'm colorblind. So, and I'm the kind of person I don't know, I'm not very quiet down. I don't like to stand in front of even looking into the Alps or into the epic mountains. And I can say, oh, look at this. Like people are saying, nodding their heads and saying, wow, look. And they can look. I I'm not a visual person. I have difficulty grasping it with my eyes. It's overwhelming for me. So I'm not really enjoying the views. So to quiet myself down, I've learned to start to listen. So I was always sitting next to a little brook or a river. I was sitting down when it started raining. I also like to go out into the forest when it's windy to hear the rustling leaves. That's my thing. And I can close my eyes. And I had, and I guess that if there was anything that guided me on my way forward was being out in nature. Then I people are saying, yeah, you got to ground yourself, walk barefoot. And so I read about that. I'm still very skeptical about it. If somebody says, yeah, grounding and earthing is really helping you, yeah, it's helping me, but I wouldn't say that it's a I don't know. No, it's helping me. That's something that's exactly, you know what? That's exactly how things I would say started with me, that I noticed, yeah, there's concepts, people are talking about it, but I didn't really want to talk about it like that. Like I don't want to convince people of the the energy flows and the I don't know, some people like to explain it very um scientifically, but you don't really, like me as a normal person, I don't really understand the science behind it. So you could tell me anything about what happens. But I notice being out in nature, I sometimes feel I have to hug a tree. I have to sit down in the grass. I have to take my shoes off. That's how I noticed that there is more beyond the corporate world.
And so you're recording, let's just keep looking at this thunderstorm. Like the way that you connect is through sound, which is so beautiful. Like, wow, what a awesome story to realize that you can be out in nature. And the immediate thing you think about when you're traveling in nature is like, wow, how beauty it is. But this alternate perspective of like actually how much auditory beauty there is too, that we don't normally, think of when we think of beauty in that sense. And so, um, but you record this. Why? What was your intention with recording it? Just for yourself? Like, did you have any plans to share this, or you just kind of this? Hey, this feels like something to do.
No, I did it for myself. It's like my photo album, and I actually used it to go to sleep when I couldn't be outside. So then I was lying in my bed and said, hey, this is really a good memory for me. So I would think, of course, I can think back of the story. So I produce these stories, I will tell the story of where I have recorded it because the listener doesn't know. I could use my memory. So that's how, and then I had first, I didn't even think of publishing this for people to sleep really. I don't know. The feedback was really good, very fast, very good feedback. And yeah, and then I said, well, anyway, I think what happened was that as long as I was camping outside, of course, you're damn tired if you're hiking 12 hours, you're going to sleep. And if you can't sleep, it's only because it's super cold and you're really uncomfortable and you have a reason for not sleeping, but you're definitely not having any negative thoughts except that you want to survive the night somehow in the wind and in the rain and everything. So, but when I was at home, I wasn't able to sleep well and I was still really stressed out. So I said to my wife, look, um, I need to go for a long hike and I want to find out what other cultures have to offer because I went to a doctor here and he said, yeah, you're in a difficult situation, Ralf. Maybe you should take sleeping pills. I said, oh, that's what you're offering. I don't want to go down that route, man. I'm already like unemployed. Now you start asking me to take sleeping pills. That's not so. I said, look, wife, I'm flying to India. And she said, how are you going to fly? It's COVID. I said, I'm flying on a medical visa. So I got a medical visa, flew down there and made an epic hike from Sagar Island near Calcutta all the way up the Ganges River to the Himalayas and making sound recordings and telling the story. And what I was doing, I was sort of going from Sagar Island is a big place for Hindus to worship gods and who knows what. And so there's a lot of ashrams in that area. So I went from ashram to ashram, from then to Buddhist temples, and I wanted to find out why those people there seem to be so relaxed. And I thought, let me ask them. So that was my plan. So I actually went there. I had nothing else to do. So I went there, started in Sagar Island, talked to a yogi there, then took a boat up the Holy River and then up the Ganges. And on each stop, I would end up somewhere. I would usually go to ashrams to spend the night there or look for big monasteries that had a guest house. Started talking to monks, practitioners, gurus, everyone there that I met on the journey and made a course about it. So I was still in my element of doing my nature sounds. I was still hiking, but I had this mission because I had sensed, oh, there seems to be an interest in sleep. And that's me myself, because I'm not a meditation master. I don't know much about it. So I wasn't teaching, I was just telling exactly what those people told me. And they came up with practices and came up with yoga nidra, progressive muscle relaxation, I don't know, all kinds of really deeply rooted methods that are also like part of what what people would learn from in a sleep clinic, but that was sort of the Indian point of view. And so that was my first course that I've produced, which is still also among the most played ones, with I think 5,000 students and a 5-star rating, I guess. Or is it down to 4.8? Or what does it have, Lou?
Did it lose a half a point? I really want to highlight something here in your story, Ralph, that I think is important and helpful for people listening, and just as a reminder for myself and for everyone. And I think of even my own practices and my own early recordings of meditations. So you, from your just own inspiration and curiosity and passion, right, recorded this nature sound from this purity, from this authenticity. And it, wildly enough, it's also your most popular track. And when I think of there's something in that, in like actually the purity of the creation, the purity of it, for then how it came to be. And we'll talk about exactly how you found Insight Timer in a second. But for those of you listening, a lot of people might know Sarah Blondin, right? Sarah Blondin is the most popular teacher on Insight Timer, and neither was Sarah Blondin a meditation teacher or ever thinking, in knowing her story from in the beginning of Insight Timer and her podcast Live Awake. She was just recording these poems that she wrote for a SoundCloud for this kind of free offering, and she ends up putting them on Insight Timer. They become this viral sensation, and she has this life where she can just be in the woods and write and create, and is huge, huge, huge on Insight Timer. But in the same ways, she wasn't creating this Live Awake podcast because she was trying to get that. That's what I'm trying to sense, is like the that are often the purest of our creations kind of come from that sense. Not to say that we don't want to do things to get somewhere, but the fact that it seemed like to me, Ralph, what you're saying is that was fulfilling for itself, right? That doing that recording and kind of opening up this interest in in recording nature sounds and telling the story was like fulfilling for you in itself. And then it seemed to have this wider impact. And so I just want to encourage people to think about that in your own life, of like doing these things that are inherently fulfilling, and often that is what's going to have the most impact.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of talk about manifesting your dream life, but then I think sometimes it's very easy. You are what you do. I at one point, like, this is a side story, but at one point I ended up on a Mediterranean island called Malta, and actually for tax reasons, because things were going quite well for me then very soon. So I went to this tax haven in the Mediterranean Sea, where I still have my company set up. But I still felt like, hey, what do I want to be? And at that time, I really wanted to be a meditation teacher, but that's sort of some time later, when I had made some discoveries. And I said, how am I going to be like a meditation teacher? Well, it's very easy. You just teach. If you don't teach, you're not. So I sat down in a place. It's been like 2 weeks. I made a Facebook post, an advertising actually, and I said, there's a free meditation class every Wednesday at this in this place, in the very open, in the middle of the city actually, and a lot of people came, and that's how I started building up my like being there. And the same with is, you are what you do. So it's really like, yeah, why don't you do it? Why don't you make that little step? Or why don't you, if you want it to be? And so I really did what I wanted. And yeah, it wasn't like, it's not as if my wife was super happy about when I was started traveling all the time and not making any money and didn't attempt to make any money. I said, well, I'm hiking, and then we all got to sort of strap the our trousers a bit closer, and we're gonna become a bit thinner. There's I'm not. I want to like. It doesn't look like I'm going to find someone to employ me at age 55 plus. So I said, and I'm not spending much money. I'm just there. I'm sleeping outside mostly or in really cheap hotel rooms. And that's how I still do it. So I travel a lot after that. After I think it really for me, it took off with my next travel. I came back from this India course, and then I think I flew to Kathmandu, and I made a huge discovery. And it was one of the first three, I would call it spiritual discoveries that I made. So, because I'm not big into meditation, I was not at that time, like I was just a hiking guy. And then I came across, I don't know, I spent time at a monastery outside of Kathmandu when I was going hiking. And I came across this, a method where you're talking to your demons. I thought, are they shitting me? These people, uh, what the fuck are they talking about? Talking to your demons. And he was even feeding the demons with your own body fluid. So that was really weird. And I thought, wow, well, at least it drew my attention. So I I followed that, and I tried, because it was not available in English language. That was the problem. They're all speaking Nepalese. They're all speaking a lot of Tibetan monks in Nepal are actually Tibetans that have fled the country when the Chinese marched in. So I found translators, and people that could help me, and that was my first, I would call it, spiritual discovery that I made. And it's this method, talking to your demons, where you can release your stress in like a swift strike. It's called the Kathmandu retreat. And the Kathmandu retreat, I think, is phenomenal. It really takes the weight off your shoulders. It's when we talk about, like, I know the meditation teachers always like to talk about, yeah, turning negative into positive. Yeah. It's always like easier said than done. The question is how? How are you gonna do that? How are you turning negative into positive, man? And I can tell you, I had that's something that I said, okay. Well, I did it at my lowest point when I'd lost my job. I was able to make a turnaround. It didn't, I couldn't say that, like, for me to say, oh, I'm a transformational teacher, I can tell you how I did it. Yeah, for me, it was just going outside in nature. That was all. But then when I discovered this opened up this method. It's it's called Chet. It's a Chet practice. Goes back 1,000 years, back to a Tibetan yogini, and that really opened my eyes, because that was far beyond what I had experienced of having to, sorry to say that, dear meditation teachers, having to sit down for 15 minutes or 30 minutes and being quiet. That wasn't my piece of cake, to be honest. At least at that point, not. And then I discovered this, and this really takes the weight off your shoulder. And that's sort of with this first discovery that I made, a spiritual discovery, something new opened up for me where I said, it's like it has awoken the Indiana Jones in me to make those discoveries and to go deeper, not just deeper into the mountains, but also deeper into this mythical world of Tibetan Buddhism.
We have a similar journey, not in the travels, but in the if you want to do something, be it, or maybe the other way around. If you want to be something, do it. And similar to you, I actually just started teaching meditation by starting a meetup group and having people come every week. And so I love hearing the similarities in that and your discovery journey and literally just going on it, taking it in, learning it for yourself, and then, okay, how do I share it with others? And there's so many things that I do in that same way. And so how or when did Insight Timer come across?
At the very beginning, my podcast that I have, the Sleeping Buddha podcast. I had it in English and German, and the German, and I stopped now, just concentrating on English language. But the podcast was in German, and it reached very fast a lot of popularity, and was among the most played podcasts in the mindfulness area in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And I think Insight Timer came up to me and said, "Hey, don't you have a few German tracks for us?"
Got
It
it.
was sort of in the mindfulness top 10 in Germany. And so I started in German and then later also translated into English.
Got it. And so did you have a course at that point that you can upload, or was that something that they asked for? Because I know at the time you
No,
can't self-upload.
I used exactly the episodes that I had on my podcast.
Yeah. And saw that starting to get traction. And then I'm imagining
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
well, there's something here that I can keep
yeah,
giving some energy to.
yeah.
Yeah. So you record your first course, you start getting it out there. I think maybe I'd love to just talk to you about record the first course, you record Kathmandu course. I'd love to talk to you about courses and your process for creating courses. Now, I just want to make a public service announcement to anyone listening that you don't have to travel to faraway lands to make a meditation course. That you can kind of take your own experiences and do them. But I love how you've done that and made that your thing. And so, yeah, I'm curious. What is your process? How do you come up? Let's start with this general question. What do you think about how do you think about creating courses in general? And then we can kind of pull the thread from there.
My approach is uh, a bit funny because it hasn't really changed. Like most of the courses are actually hikes that I do. So from from the Kathmandu retreat where I was mostly in one monastery, then I did sort of round trips, like 20 days around Mount Manaslu in Nepal, which is pretty challenging. And I combined that with that story with my um, well with Tibetan teachings. In that case, like for instance, the also a very popular course is the Warrior's Path, which is about resilience. So for me, that's why I'm not really the sort of the calm guy who likes to sit down. I'm more, let's say, the toughen up guy and get some resilience, go outside, dare to go outside. And I like to teach by example. So my courses are always a journey around some sacred mountain with a story how to toughen up. And teachings that I find or that I come across in during my travels, like this, the warrior's path to resistance, which is a course that goes into like the Tibetans have four what they call different dignities for mystical animals like the snow lion, the tiger, the Garuda, and the dragon. And these animals have, they live in the mountains. So to give a, let me put it like this, to make a course about this on a theoretical level, number one, it's not possible because the information isn't publicly available. Secondly, is that you don't have the cultural and the geographical context. You have to experience the yaks, the food, the wind, the cold, the mountains, to know how they come up with these mythical figures. But these are like archetypal ideas. They stand like the dragon stands for creativity. It stands for like dancing across the sky, and um, and that's sort of a something that how to let go or to achieve goals is by sometimes, yeah, just being playful. It's the playful dragon or the proud. It speaks for itself. I don't even want to speak about the lion. Everybody knows if you're saying a snow lion, that's obviously a feeling that you can incorporate. And that sort of these teachings are teachings that I discovered during my hikes, experienced during my hikes, and I take the listeners on these spiritual journeys. They are really spiritual journeys. That's how my courses are.
So you go out and it could be, I'm imagining also doesn't have to be super far, but it's like that sounds like it creates your process that is 100% so unique to go and live that thing. Now, are you, as you come up with your days, like maybe more on a practical level, like, okay, let you show up to Kathmandu on this hike, like when do you start understanding what the outline looks like or what the whole course looks like? Does that happen after? Does that happen during it? And are you scripting your days, or are you just getting on the mic, doing recording of sounds, telling a story, like maybe more nuanced into your actual, like the practical process of, I have an idea, I'm on this hike, to I'm writing it or I'm outlining it, to I'm recording it. I just find it inspiring and helpful to hear other people's like creative process.
Well, besides, there's two things that I do on the hikes. One is I'm out there to enjoy myself, and
Enjoyment.
I'm
Okay,
out
good. Yeah,
there
enjoy it.
that
I like
so
it. Yeah.
that's what I'm out there for.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. I wouldn't have to. I don't go out there to work. So I'm out there to have fun, to experience new things. They're really challenging things they are really challenging hikes that I'm doing there. They're sometimes very, very lonely. Um, and so I go out there to experience them. The only thing that I do is still, I always have my recording device and I make sound recordings. And then, which is, I would call that, I go there with a theme in mind where maybe during the Kathmandu retreat, I'd heard about this method, like the spiritual warrior, and I'm thinking, spiritual warrior, warrior's path. Okay, I've been hearing this. I don't know why it keeps coming up. And so these things keep coming up in conversations. And first, because if you're focusing on one thing, especially in Buddhism, it's got such a wide field. So you're saying to say, hey, can we please, if you're talking to those monks, you say, please, can we just keep to the topic of like just about this demons practice? Don't come up with now new things like the warrior's path or spiritual warrior, whatever. Please, can we just cut that out? Because I need to focus on that. Let's talk about that. So, but then you can't at one point, and you can't ignore it. So it's I say, no, they keep saying something about this, and then I say, okay, let me research this topic now. And that's sort of how I do it. Then I research a topic, I go there, I will say, and this is also like my mission. So I say, okay, I'm going on an epic hike, but I'm going to visit every like monastery that I come past. I will try to find someone who speak English, or I will take an interpreter with me, sometimes a porter that will help me translate. Sometimes I have friends there that will help me translate. They translate, and I find out if they'd heard anything about this. So I try to get first-hand experience and note that down maximum, more digesting it. And then I come home. So that's my design research that I do. I come home and I write the course and record it and use the nature sounds that I recorded.
Got it. So it's the whole you're kind of doing the research in a way. You're researching when you're going out
Exactly.
there just in your own journey, and then you're also recording the nature sounds from that land, and then you come home, put it into practice. Now, are you like even more process? Like, are you scripting, which I do? I script all of my meditation courses because I'm trying to condense the information and the something what I'm trying to share in as little as possible. So are you scripting it, or are you saying, okay, I know what I'm doing today, and I'm going to get on and tell the story and share the insight or the lesson more flow? Because I know people that do things both ways, different.
Yeah, no, I script.
Yeah,
So I
me
must
too.
say, so besides, so one thing is me going out and exploring. There is definitely a side of me that is about productivity. I produce a lot. And I produce a lot by scripting, by reusing elements, by reusing sounds, reusing parts of stories, um, publishing parts of courses as separate tracks, because reusing sounds. I've created my own. Um, how do people know if you listen to my 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 tracks? It always sounds the same. You could say, at least in the last couple of years, I've got my own sound design and I've got my own music. It's very emotional. So, but I'm very structured. So everything is very, very structured. And that's how I'm able to produce a lot of content.
Another highlight here for you, and what I want people to really take in, is this idea of reusing content, right? To have things that you have in your course, or to give a snippet maybe in a free track or a premium track if you're talking Insight Timer, or to use it in other places as well. That we have to There's two reasons that I think that's important. One, not everyone's going to take that. They're going to hear that piece maybe in somewhere else. It might be an older track. I think we think that we need to only do things once, and then that's it, and we can't repeat things. But especially if it's like a really powerful practice or lesson, that often, even if they are people that have heard that over and over again, repetition is how we learn, right? And so there's also the fact of like, don't be afraid to reuse content, repackage content, say the same things. I think that's just, I want to highlight that because I know people can be like, oh, I shouldn't because I have this here. Like, no, no. Repetition, if it's the same person listening to it, we're going to even learn more with with repetition. Um, how do you, or there's I see courses like a singer sees albums, and I might really enjoy one course, and I'm gonna think like, this course is gonna do so well. I know it's gonna do well. And um I one of my favorite courses on Insight Timer that I've created is probably my least played. And it's like, well, whatever. You could just like an album, like you don't really know often what's gonna do well until you get something out there. And so I'd be curious, in the courses that you have done that have done well versus ones that maybe don't get as much traction, if you can, you might not even notice anything. Do you know, like, does it feel like there's a difference in the ones that are doing the best versus the ones that maybe don't have as much traction? Do you sense like any pattern there for yourself?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I can definitely say that I have a core of courses that are all my hiking courses. And then I did a couple of courses of things that I had learned, but put together later without sort of this story taking people on a journey. So all the ones where I'm true to my core, they always perform well.
That's a great
That's it.
lesson right there. So where should someone, I know, and we share, I think you're doing this too. I saw you do run a live on this, and we share this passion for also helping people create courses. And I'm a big on we're collaborating, not competing in so much of this work. And so maybe there's a future for us to talk about there. But I'd be curious your thoughts of where, let's say someone's listening to this and I don't have a course, where should they begin in starting their first course?
I think you gotta have to you have to is there a story you want to get off your chest? I can't really I'm not um I wouldn't in I'm not someone to encourage content production for the sake of content production. Either it has a value, like your show has a value, man. People love to listen to your show because it's got a value for them, not because you want to create content. No, because it's got a value, and you're interested in learning from all those awesome people that you're interviewing. I know you're a showman, and you can learn so much from it. That obviously, and the same is with if you haven't got anything to say, don't say it. So I no, I don't have a. I have I only have an opinion on quality. Produce quality. Don't go cheap on microphones. Don't go cheap on software. It makes me cry to listen. Even Sarah Biondin, I listened to her stuff. I actually analyzed her sound quality, and it's really bad. She does it in her living room. I can hear it
Yeah.
with a yeah, she's using a good mic, but uh she doesn't know, like she doesn't master them, or she doesn't do anything with it. They're far too quiet. If you turn them up, you can hear the background noises. It's really bad quality. And that's something that where you cannot be successful with bad quality. Very simple, that if you're delivering your message with through sound, it has to be crystal clear. And that's all I can speak of. I don't want to encourage anyone to, yeah, if
I
they don't
think
have.
there's an argument to be made that Sarah Blondin has become successful with maybe without the greatest quality, but I love what you're saying with having the quality content. I think it's like that's yes and there.
Yeah, it's a good, you either you have a good story to tell or you don't.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can make money by breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. I even in my I make sure that I never use those words, because
Ah, I
people,
like it.
yeah, if you don't have anything to tell, you tell people to breathe in and breathe out. They can do it even without thinking. So that's not a story.
And so this is what, as an old head on Insight Timer, this is where I felt a lot of resistance and like dang, when I saw them switch to self-upload courses rather than going through the team and going through the process. And there's a few reasons that some more selfish, some more broad, right? As someone who had many courses on the app already, I knew that that was going to flood the course with the app with courses. And when more things happen, that's how it was with everything, right? There's a dilution of those plate counts. So I knew that that was going to happen. That's okay. That's my selfish reasons, and that's fine. But what I am maybe sensing, and maybe I'm just as my own shadow that I'm working with, even though I don't produce a ton of courses. But courses in some ways are the way to get new exposure on the app. And so there's an idea. I don't know if this I can't validate this, but Ralph, maybe you have a sense if you're seeing this, where people just creating a lot of content, making them into 2 or 3 day courses because that's going to get promoted, and trying, because that's the way to make money, right, on the app, is through courses and premium content. And so that's what I'm sensing in you is like to not do that, right? To make sure you're not doing that, and to focus on creating really great stuff from your heart and inspiration. But that's like, there's this fear in me, or this resistance in me, that it's going to be used to just create whatever. Because if I can just make a ton of, like, if I can just make more and more and more and more and more and more and more, I'm going to maybe get some plays, and I'm going to make money. So curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's, I think, no, I don't really have any thoughts. I don't have any, no. Yeah, I can see that people that they've introduced these 2 day courses now. Yes, I think what you can do, I tried it actually. Um, uh, like I called it micro mastery. I mark them as micro mastery. So good. If I want to get something of my chest, or I want someone to get the message, and this person, like, time is valuable. And acknowledging that time is valuable, you could say, look, I have an important story to tell, and but I'm mindful of your time. So what I will do is I will create a short course. This could lead to a longer course. You could say, if you want to know more about it, but I'm giving you a condensed version, which is not a bad idea. But you're right. I think there is that you can get some exposure now with the short courses, and instead of producing premium tracks, you produce these short courses. I think nobody will doubt that uh, the whole algorithm thing at Inside Timer is really painful for all of us. So they shouldn't be surprised that the system is sort of misused. It's Inside
And
Timers.
it's not wrong, and it's not right. So like, I don't want to pretend like I'm saying this like, oh, I'm the right one. I think I just have to be honest of like what happens when you've been on something for, when I've seen everything happen, and when I see things that I know, again, selfishly, are negatively impacting me. And I don't think there's anything wrong to create a great 2 day course, and to make it like be a snippet of something greater. I think it's just, I sometimes, I think I always looked at courses like books, and because I put so much heart and energy into them, like I would write a book, that there's like, again, this old head mentality of like, people aren't looking at it in this gravitas that it is. Like, they're just like looking at it to just get more content out there. And that's okay. Like, they weren't on the app in 2016. They didn't have the wave that I had. And at this point, I would be doing the same thing. So I think the thread I want to come back to is not that it's wrong to do those short courses, but coming back to just making them good, right? Making them like your authentic expression, doing it for the sake, because there's something that you want to share. Like, hey, I want to give people a little micro mastery of this thing, and that feels like what's wanting to come out of me, versus how do I hit my revenue goal for Insight Timer this month, right? Doing it not that trying to like make something happen in that way. Oh, I need to create 4 more courses. And okay, well, I don't really feel like creating courses. What could I do? Oh, and so I don't know. I don't, that might be your process. And so again, I can wax I'm saying wax poetic a lot in this podcast. I don't know why, because I feel like I can be romantic. I could be like an old head romantic, almost like a grandpa that was like, in my day, you had to do it this way, and now kids are doing it that way, and yeah, there's like that energy to it. So I'm conscious and self-aware of my own blind spots around it, and for whatever it's worth, I still just want to encourage people that this is a platform where we get to share our gifts and let the energy of spirit or source or whatever you believe in move through, and doing it from that intention rather than how do I get 10K followers in the next 6 months? Oh, I need to create 20 courses, right? Doing it just from that alternate space. So, Ralph, I know we're kind of out of time. Do you have a little bit extra time, or do you
Yep.
have to jump off to something? Okay.
Yes, no.
I'd love to talk to you more about some things. So, how well, let's meet a flip on that. Exactly what I just said. How, for someone on the app, would you recommend them growing their enrollment or income? If and how to do about that, or maybe how you've seen yourself do that. If there's anything besides the Insight Timer marketing, like Insight Timer does a lot of the marketing for us. But I guess in your experience, do you have any wisdom for people who want to grow their enrollment in courses or their followers or their income? So let's use Insight Timer as the
Yeah.
example.
Yeah. Definitely. I know there's also discussions in the Facebook group about it. The questions, what should I produce? Is very, very simple. Produce premium content and courses. I've only produced like premium content. I have before, like quite a lot of the tracks that I had as normal tracks were put into the premium from Insight Timer at when they started it. So the only tracks that are normal tracks that I have are from before they introduced this. 75% of the revenue of well, they split 50-50. They take half and give half to the teachers. 75 goes to premium content and courses. Both is premium content, yeah, to premium to courses and the premium tracks. Within that 75%, there is also quite a large chunk that goes to replying to comments in courses. So that also makes quite a difference how many comments you get. So I would encourage you to ask people proactively for like leaving a message so you can reply back. That definitely makes, for me now, what has happened, I don't want to build an audience that listens to my stuff for free, because they cannot listen to my courses. And I love my courses. I live for my courses. This is like the books that I produce. This is what I want to be known for. So I don't care about the free listeners. I don't have a message for them. I produce some sleep episodes sometimes when I don't like it. When I personally don't like, I'm not 100% sure of if that is a really nice story, then I would drop it as a normal episode. Besides that, I create really top quality stories. I release them as premium. And now my premium tracks get more listens than if I release a normal track, because for the listener, also don't forget that for the listeners, it is much more pleasant to listen to well-made tracks like the premium tracks, and that Insight Timer is going that direction. They are correct because they're dealing with 18,000 teachers that all are not recording in studios, or most are not recording in studios. So they need to bring their quality up. And the way they did this was good. And it's a huge chance just to build out your audience that are also listening to your courses, which pays a lot more.
So I have something I wish Insight Timer did, and I think they piloted it. I wasn't one of the people they piloted it with, but I think I know some people that they piloted it with. And this might, if they did do this, I would say it might offer another perspective on not doing free content anymore. But what I will say, for a while, this was years ago, I would have people comment. They would take my most popular course is a course called Learn to Stop Caring What Others Think. And there was many times where people would jump into that course and say, "Hey, Lou, I signed up for Insight Timer Premium for this course. I listened to some of your free content. I saw you had this course, and this is the reason I signed up for Insight Timer Premium, was specifically to take this course. And then obviously you get all access to all the other courses. I wish Insight Timer had some model to reward that, to give you some kind of percentage on, and you're shaking your head, so maybe you don't agree. I think they
No,
should.
totally.
Do
You're
agree?
totally right. Yes.
Yes. Okay. I was reading it wrong. But the that yeah. And so with that, I would say that if that was the case or not, but sometimes you can be the converter for having a really quality free track. Say at the end of the free track, hey, I have a course that goes into this. Someone takes that free track and goes, man, I really would like to do a little bit more on it, and potentially then pays for the service because of your free track. And so maybe that will happen at some day soon. That would be so incredible. But it's not yet. And there's still a case that people, if you are creating free tracks, people might find you and then want to pay for the app and go on your services. So just wanted to say that. I hope they do that at some point. I'm hoping to have some Insight Timer team on this podcast at some point soon. So maybe I can talk to them specifically.
Yeah, I
So
totally agree. I mean, I think that's what you're saying is looking back, it's really disastrous, to be honest. They're really clumsy. They're clumsy with their software development. They're clumsy with their product management. They're clumsy with how they treat the teachers. They're clumsy with their policing and spying out teachers and spying into lives, spying into content. They're clumsy with their online marketing. I don't know why they don't. It's the only company that doesn't market their actual content instead of them. They go in and like it's really everything is clumsy, and that's I think that's at the same time the good news. They've got this new CMO, Melissa. She and that's I think talking about now why I am also like to work with Inside Timer. It does give hope that they put someone in there now in charge who has built big companies, because even the way how clumsy and badly they treat the teachers, like the communication with the teachers is like disastrous from my perspective. Not to utilize those this awesome group of people to have calls, to have groups, to have chats, to have whatever. They're trying to isolate the teachers. It seems not to collaborate in any ways. So this is, and however we feel about whatever is happening inside, the if we're looking at making money with it, I'm happy they start from the marketing, because that is just as clumsy the way they communicate um, with their customers on social media, on all channels. It's so clumsy. I'm happy that they decided to look for a marketing person to drive it, because if Insight Timer teacher, if Insight Timer now grows 10 or 100 times, we're growing with that.
yes,
And I
yes,
can take a lot of pain from them as long as they grow.
yeah. So I hear you on a lot of that, and I agree with the marketing aspect of like they haven't really marketed a lot, and that's Christopher has had a strong, really pure, authentic vision from the beginning. I there's things. in your share that I think as someone who I can never get over the amount of gratitude that I have for Insight Timer and what it's like brought into my life. And I don't know if you were around in you found it maybe later into 2020, but or were you around when the mentors long story short, basically they were doing a lot of the things that you're sharing. I think they had more calls with teachers, they had more opportunities and collaborations, and I think they just got burned by that initiative at that one point. This is me just speculating that they got burned by how much resources they put into teachers and into the mentors and that whole program and the workshops that were happening, that I feel like they took a big step back. And so I just yeah, just there's an endless amount of gratitude that I have for Insight Timer, and they're definitely not perfect by any means. They definitely can, like all of us, right? But I think the purity of which it's created, I think, is why people like me and you and so many other people are finding audiences in ways that we wouldn't have ever found it in the past. And we're making, substantial income, right? If you can start to figure that out, making a couple $1,000s a month is not any, it's a dream. It's a dream for many to have that kind of passive revenue. And hopefully if you dial it up, that could continue to grow as Insight Timer grows. And so, Ralph, it seems like you saw something that you wish there was. Like I wish there was teachers support somewhere, and you tell me if this is the wrong reason, but you kind of created that. Like you created a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, where you're getting Insight Timer teachers together to support each other. And so correct me if I'm wrong that that's the reason, but it sounds like this inspired this other offering that you have.
Absolutely. I felt so isolated from creating the content and getting user feedback, but not being able to communicate to other teachers, not to share any knowledge. I'd actually reached out to them about it, but I got sort of their lovely one of their lovely template answers back, that I should shut up, or they didn't. Then they said, please, did you read this? And then I'm getting are you satisfied with that answer? No, I'm not satisfied, but will still not listen to you. I said, okay, then I started myself. If you don't want to talk to me or to others or bring us together, it's not that difficult. So that's what I did. And I also invited them to the groups. They don't respond. So they don't wanna like join in. I don't know why. I'm always a bit surprised about it, to be honest. But that's how they are. Well, they're not bigger than a grocery store, you must know. I mean, they're making 40 million worldwide turnover. 40 million, that's like less than one Walmart is making, less than one Tesco store per year. It's a really, really small company. And that's still, let me tell you, that's the good news about it. The good news is this
Yeah.
has a lot more potential if you're running it a little bit smart. So I'm really happy about Melissa joining the team and hopefully growing it.
So what's been surprising for you about the community so far? Maybe just like in starting it and seeing people connect, like what has been surprising or what has been nourishing, or yeah, like how has that experience been for you and what you've seen?
Oh, it's been so good. I mean, you've seen it yourself. This has been total game changer in my life. Um, to be, I learned so much from others. I'm also being able to teach others. I always think, the better we get. If you open a restaurant in an area where there's only one restaurant, where you're the only restaurant, you think, oh, I'm going to make money here because it's the only restaurant. Well, man, you're wrong. And if you're opening a restaurant among other shitty restaurants, you're not going to shine in there because people are going to assume it's a shitty restaurant. So me having my content up on a platform, I want others to be good as well. The only way that platform is going to grow is not from my content, but from everybody's really good content. So that's why I said, well, if there's anything I can help with, is with what's got to do with my passion. It's about, yeah, producing good content. I listen. I like to listen. That's why I like to sit alone in the forest and listen to the rustling leaves. And if I sit down and listen to a podcast or an inspiring story, it has to be good sound quality. And that's where I found, oh, I can help people there. I can also help them become faster in their production process. So I'm happy to help there because I know in the long term, I'm not helping others, and it's not like I'm feeding my enemies or my competition, making my competition stronger. Yeah, the more good competition there is, the better the platform gets, and the more I will benefit from it. I want to be a restaurant in sort of the best restaurant street of town. And that's what I want Inside Timer to be. And I do my part to make it better, and to help make it good and help them as much as I can.
I love that analogy. That's so good. And it's not something I would have thought of off the bat. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, if everyone gets better, we all win. It's something I do believe in that, when you win, I win, and this collaborative energy. And I've done so much personal work around competition and jealousy, with even with dear friends that I'm now with that are also on the app. So go check out if you are a meditation teacher or anyone on, and there's so many things you can share on Insight Timer. So if you're on Insight Timer, yeah, definitely go check out on Facebook, Insight Timer Teachers. And then I think you also have one on LinkedIn, which I'm not as clued in with, but it's, I think, a similar Insight Timer Teachers to check in on. And I actually asked the group just before this podcast episode about any questions that they had for you. And I hope I asked that not because I wasn't prepared, but because I was like wanting to see if the group had something that I didn't have. And I loved a question Megan had. This is kind of going back to, and Megan is actually, I know, a listener of this podcast. So shout out to you, Megan. Thanks for your question. But I think it's unique, and maybe something that someone might want to think about is, she asked, how do you actually record the nature sounds? Like, is there anything that's different between, let's say, if I'm in a studio recording a meditation, to how do I go outside? What if I want to find the sounds of a bird? For me, it'd be the sound of a lawnmower, but maybe there's something that I can create with that. Like, is there, yeah, I'd just be curious of like any advice for recording outside in nature. Like, what should someone know?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is you can't record in any area when there's an airport around. Like in normal, like now, actually in the Bavarian Alps, I cannot record anymore. You can only record loud noises that people don't really like. Like one of the noises that you can record is rivers, but people don't respond well to that. It's not a nice sound. Rain is already challenging. Through rain, you can still hear if there's a plane going along the sky. Those microphones, like all of them, we know how difficult it is with background noise, and it's easier to remove background noise on a sound on a spoken word than on a nature sound. Um, Also very difficult, rustling leaves or a bit more subtle sounds. They are very difficult to record, and you need it very quiet. And that's how also I ended up in more and more remote areas and hiking in places that are far away, so that I can get in. That's the most. You don't really need a lot of equipment, like from a microphone perspective. It's easy to Google, but you don't have to invest that much, maybe 200 euros for a recording device, but you have to be very remote.
So, answer to your question, Megan, is get out, go deep, go deep into the wilderness. Maybe not the most satisfying answer, but the truth, and also why I think your courses are and your work is resonating with people because you have gone on that adventure to find those sounds. So, Ralf, great work for all the different work that you're doing. Thanks for taking the time on this show. Is there anywhere you want to send people to find out what you're doing or creating?
Yeah, well, anybody who has a Plus account, I would definitely, one of the courses that I personally like most, and I like it from also from the sound quality, and it's something where you can see how to work with music, not just hiding the background noises, is definitely the warrior's path to resilience. Go visit that, but any other track as well. I think I'm just listen and get the how I use music to create positive feelings.
Go up your recording game and check that out. I think I will be, as someone who's 90% of my 98% of my content doesn't have music. It's something I've been thinking about more of, like actually bringing in more feel to that, like a journey. And so yes, I'll be checking that out too, Ralph. So thanks so much. And um, thanks for spending your time. This has been super fun, and maybe we'll do a round two at some point.
Thank you very much, Lou. And it's such a great podcast you have there. And looking forward to who is coming next on your show.
Yay. Thanks, Ralph. All right. Take care, friends.